For a while, I was interested in hacked Pokemon games like Light Platinum and Flora Sky. It always seems more fun when it's made by someone else, or at least for me. Though, for once, I felt like going old school and trying official Pokemon games on a regular Game Boy. However, these days, I have trouble saving up money to buy a copy of Pokemon Red or Blue. But, luckily for me, I found this particular cartridge in my neighbor's dumpster bin. Yes, I am a dumpster diver, don't judge me. I was wondering why anyone would throw away a red cartridge without a single crack. So, I checked with my neighbor to confirm they were sure they didn't want it. However, they seemed perplexed as if they'd never seen it in their life. Thinking nothing more, I went home, looking at the cartridge's sticker on the way. Just a plain old red version, the label torn slightly across the Charizard's neck. But I expected the label being torn since it was such an old game. I had blue version as a kid, so I was a bit eager to see the albeit minimal differences red version had. I was suspecting that the game might be damaged, but when I put it inside my old Game Boy and turned it on, the game booted up just fine. Though I was disappointed by what I saw when the title screen showed up. Pokemon Red Zero version. Dang it! It was a hack. Hacks were neat, but they had zero monetary value, no pun intended. The originals might be valuable by now, and I wanted to play Red anyway. Not this. I might as well give it a go, I thought to myself. The name was odd. Red Zero? What could that mean? A prequel, perhaps? The more I thought about this, though, the more interested I became. My initial disappointment turned into curiosity. I wanted to know what the creator had made, and I was going to note everything I saw. The first oddity I noticed was the start screen had a Charizard next to the trainer instead of a Charmander. Also, the Pokemon never cycled through as the original versions did. It just stayed Charizard. I stared at the screen to see if another Pokemon would show up, but it never did. Shrugging, I hit start, noticing that there was no Charizard cry as I did, like there was supposed to be. I saw there was a continue option, so I figured that I'd do what everyone else did with the games, and see what the previous owner had done with their save file. No. I blinked in surprise. That never happened with the Pokemon Blue I had. The game wouldn't let me continue, no matter what I did. But on the fourth attempt, I heard the Charizard Rhyhorn cry. Quiet and barely audible, but definitely there. Shrugging it off, I just decided to hit new game, like I would have done after checking the old file anyway. The screen cut to black for a while. Professor Oak didn't appear like I was expecting him to. Eventually, the screen came back, showing a bedroom, 2 beds, a TV, and a computer in the corner. My trainer sprite appeared to be the usual one, consistent with the original Red version. I was curious as to why it didn't ask my name, though my question was quickly answered as I opened the pause menu, noticing my trainer name was Steven. It seems the game had automatically chosen a name. Curious, I saw he had a starter amount of money with no badges. I also noticed that he looked pretty different to Red. His hair was longer and reaching halfway down his back. Red's usual expression was replaced with a smug look. He also appeared taller, having the appearance of a 16-year-old. Next, I checked out his Pokemon. A single Charmander that was only level 5 named Angel. Nothing odd about it. She had the usual Charmander stats, and only knew Scratch and Tail Whip. Basic stuff. Returning to the game, I walked about the room, noticing Steven's long hair was present on the back of my trainer sprite when I turned the camera. I didn't recognize the house though, but I descended down the stairs to see more. Downstairs was another trainer who spoke to me the instant I guided Steven down the stairs. Chris. Ready yet? Steven. Let's go. I assumed this Chris was my rival, decided for me, a likely replacement of Blue. I thought back to the bedroom having 2 beds, realizing that they weren't just rivals. They were either brothers or roommates. After the exchange, it led to the introduction of battle, like the one against Blue in the lab. Simple enough, scratch, tackle, until I won purely for having the first turn. Steven's back sprite had a different pose. His hair was looking like it was blowing in the wind, and it was now in higher quality. I left the house after defeating Chris, stepping out into the Pallet Town theme. Going to the east, I found that this was indeed Pallet Town. The house was merely on the outskirts to the west. I noticed that there was no mysterious grassy fields like the ordinary Pallet Town. Wandering about, I decided to check in on Red's home. His mother was inside, and when I talked to her, she told Stephen how handsome he looked, hoping her son would look up to him as a role model for when he became a trainer himself. It led me to realize that this game took place a couple of years before the original Pokemon Red and Blue. Red was even upstairs, playing with the game system in his room, commenting, "I'm gonna be the best when it's my turn." I was starting to like this hack. It was exciting, a completely new adventure, a different character. Stephen seemed to have a history with the people of the town, a reputation, a personality beyond a silent protagonist. The people in town talked to him as a person, making conversation, not just spouting tutorials. Even Blue's sister had a new dialogue. They seemed to be in a relationship too, as the exchange ended with a heart over her head. Professor Oak wished Stephen luck, giving him a Pokédex to aid with his adventure. He wasn't giving it to him due to the reason behind the experience, like every other Pokemon game out there. He gave it to Stephen out of kindness, something to help him along his way. It was a gift. I like this more and more with each passing second. The game seemed to have an actual story now. The protagonist was somebody, not just a cookie-cutter protagonist anyone could be. Not some blank sheet that was replaceable. The story was different, though the actual gameplay remained mostly unchanged. I guided Stephen north like I was supposed to, went from town to town, collected badges, received the praise of leaders. Stephen's fame even seemed to spread, as some NPCs would talk like they knew him. Since this was in the past, some leaders appeared younger, and some were different altogether. I used Angel for every battle, and she was growing surprisingly fast. She handled the first leader with ease, even pounded the second leader with no trouble at all. She wasn't as adversely affected by super effective attacks as others, and did more damage than a regular Charmander. She was a veritable powerhouse. She even became a Charizard at the mere level of 30 instead of 36. Things started to get weird though, as soon as I reached Lavender Town. It was the only place that was noticeably different. Well, with the exception of Route 4, where this time, the path from Cerulean City to Mount Moon wasn't blocked off, so I could go back at any time. There was no Team Rocket invasion, which I found odd, but I did remember that this was a game set in the past, so that attack wouldn't occur until Red's time. I had tried to enter the Pokemon Tower aiming to get a Ghastly, but that's when the unexpected happened. Stephen, I have no reason to be here. Stephen then took one step backward afterwards. Stephen wouldn't go into the Pokemon Tower, no matter what I did. It was weird. There are a million places in Kanto you do not need to be. Random little houses with nothing but children NPCs, for example. Why was it here that Stephen wouldn't enter? I shrugged, figuring I wouldn't need a Ghastly, seeing as Angel could handle anything. So, I went on my way. Lavender Town was serving no purpose other than a passageway with a Pokemon Center. The game generally progressed from there. The remaining gyms fell, and eventually, I made my way to the Elite Four and defeated them all. As with Blue, my brother Chris was there before me, initiating the championship battle, which Angel swept with ease. The aftermath of the fight was quite pleasant. There was none of the tension that was present between Red and Blue at the end of their match. Stephen and Chris congratulated each other on their progress before the screen went white. No Hall of Fame, nor any credits. When the screen came back, it was at the house again, the two brothers sitting at the computer conversing with each other. No music was playing during this. Stephen, I don't want to. Chris, I just gotta borrow her for a second to finish the Pokédex. The entry wouldn't register unless she recognized me as a master just for a second. But I promise I'll give her back afterwards. Come on, please? Yes or no then appeared. I was a bit perplexed, so I hit no to be cautious. Come on, please? I hit no again. Come on, please? I realized that this would continue to loop until I hit yes. So, I did, just to see what would happen. Alright, this will take 1 second, then we'll both be Pokemon Masters. The screen changed to the animation shown when two people trade Pokemon, which I found a bit weird seeing as I was solo. Still, whatever this was supposed to happen. Angel went through. I watched as she began to travel down the trading tube. I heard a snapping sound, and that made me jump. The sudden noise resonating in my silent bedroom, loud due to the volume being turned all the way up. Looking at the screen, I noticed that the game had seemed to have frozen. Angel still mid-trade, but the game wasn't doing anything. So with a sigh, I just turned off the game, wondering where my last save was. When the game turned back on, I stared for a moment at the start screen. There was no Charizard next to Steven. Upon pressing the start button, I saw the new game option was absent, leaving continue to be the only option. It was strange, bizarre to say the least, so I selected it. What I saw next shocked me. Several years later, the Lavender Town theme came first, playing its usual way, the screen slowly fading in from blackness. Steven was in the Pokemon Tower, which made the music even stranger, seeing as the tower had a theme of its own. He was standing in front of a tombstone, not doing anything. Wondering what was going on, I pressed A. Steven said nothing. Confused, I tried walking, realizing I was indeed in control at the moment. I brought up the pause menu and checked my party. Angel was gone. Not just Angel, all of his Pokemon. He had nothing. The Pokedex was absent from the menu. His bag was empty. Honestly concerned now, I checked his trainer card. He had no money. He had no badges. His playtime was 43,800 hours, which was impossible, as I'd only 30 logged before. But it wasn't the strangest part. His picture, the picture of the handsome, confident young trainer, was not there. Steven's sprite was gone entirely from the trainer card. It was as if he resigned from being a Pokemon trainer. Closing the menu, I went to move out of the tower, but with every few steps I took away from the tombstone, the screen flickered like it did when Pokemon got poisoned. Gulping, I brought up the trainer card again. His picture was slowly coming back. Every step I took, a row of pixels got restored. By the time I had exited the tower, it was all back. But this time, I could barely recognize him. He was the same Steven, but this time, he was slumped over with his hands covering his face. Steven seemed to appear taller than when I began the game as well, and his hair also looked longer. I'd already guessed what was going on, but this clinched it. I began to put some things together in my mind. I'd always wondered why there was no champion in the original games beside your rival. Why is it you, the protagonist, had to beat your primary opponent when he just waltzed in, no previous champion to challenge? Then it struck me. The answer was right here. The previous champion gave up. His precious Angel was dead, and with her, so died part of him. His Pokedex, the other Pokemon, his badges, his fame, all of it. He threw it away. Those years I missed. The years where all those hours came from. I even did the math. There are 43,830 hours in 5 years. Add that to my 30 from before, and it matched up. Now it was clear why Steven no longer looked like a teenager, but instead, a young man. Even so, the game kept going. This should have been an ending. What else was there to do? I had no Pokedex, no Pokemon, no items. What was I supposed to be doing? I talked to everyone in the town, but they all said similar things. Are you okay? Still mourning, I see. Everything will be alright. Please, is there anything we can do? Steven never replied to any of them, and they all said the same things over and over again. I couldn't put the game down now. My morbid curiosity got the best of me. I headed off to the tall grass, and eventually got into a battle with a Rattata. Steven, of course, didn't send any Pokemon out. I could only see his sprite. I was wondering how I'd battle. Wild Rattata left you be. The battle ended without anything happening. It was certainly interesting, and it happened that way every time I encountered a Pokemon. Wild Pidgey ignored you. Wild Ponyta wandered off. Wild Pikachu fled. Also, I should mention that when I left Lavender Town, the music stopped altogether and was replaced by a faint static sound. I searched everywhere, every town, and talked to everybody, wondering just what I needed to do. My frustration was mixing with the depressing atmosphere of all this, making the experience altogether unnerving and uncomfortable. Still, I couldn't tear myself away. I needed to know if there was something else. I was starting to get a bit frustrated. Nobody telling me anything besides giving me their condolences. They tried to provide me with items like lemonade or soda pop. Each of these met with Steven saying no. I facepalmed from my idiocy, suddenly realizing how likely the answer was right in front of me. Pallet Town. Walking over to Pallet Town was a pain. I had to walk with no Pokemon to fly with, no bicycle to ride, and Steven only seemed to move half the regular movement speed. I also noticed that the closer I got to Pallet Town, the static noise got louder. When I got further away, it got quieter. When I finally got there, the static was so loud that the sound effects of the game got obscured. I first tried talking to Professor Oak. These things happen. You were just unlucky. Next, I tried Blue's sister. Please, don't leave home again. I tried to go inside Red's house. The door is locked. With nowhere else to go, I walked to the west, finding the house from the beginning, which I'd never entered since leaving Pallet Town. Inside was Chris, but talking to him was just as useless. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Steven simply replied with nothing. I pondered for a moment. If this was the ending, Steven, doomed to do nothing but roam Kanto in misery, haunted by the memories, forced to listen to everyone's concerns about him. As a last-ditch effort to do anything, I went to the bedroom and walked over to the bed. Good night. The screen faded to black for a moment, but then slowly faded back in. The world has a black tint to it. Chris's sprite laying on the other bed. I assumed that this meant it was the night. Steven. I have to do it. Do what? Again, I had no idea. I tried inspecting everything in the room. Nothing happened. But as soon as I left the house, another dialogue box appeared. It's the only thing I can do that will bring her back. What was it? Something that could do anything? I couldn't for the life of me figure it out. Wandering about, I left Pallet Town the usual way. On Route 1, there were no NPCs to be seen, and no wild Pokemon appeared. The same was for Viridian City, the whole way without music. I tried going to Route 2, but Steven said, not that way. Steven refused to go to Route 2 for some reason. Where did Steven want to go? I figured it had to be Route 22, because it was the only other place I could go beside the houses. I guided Steven to Route 22. I doubted he wanted Victory Road since there was no reason to go there anymore. I figured I might as well give it a try. I guided him inside the Pokemon League reception gate and tried to continue forward. Steven again said, not that way. I pondered for a second. Where else was there to go, if not there? That's when I noticed something was to the west. An entrance to somewhere I'd never seen before. I stopped to think for a second. Where could it lead? I guided Steven to the unknown area, and when I saw the place, I knew what it was immediately. It was Route 28, minus that little house that was there in gold and silver. Steven then said, it's time to go. At this point, I had no control over Steven. He walked towards Mount Silver. He went inside, and he went up the mountain, and at last got to the summit. Where red was in gold and silver was instead a black block. Steven walked up to it. A battle then initiated. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw what was there. A glitchy Pokemon with no name. Wild appeared. Steven then said, "Mine." Wild was caught. Steven didn't do anything. He just commanded that atrocity of broken data to join him. No. Become his possession. And it did. I was getting more and more disturbed by all this. Checking the start menu, I saw that the Pokemon was not in my party, but instead an item. I checked the trainer card as well. Steven had his back to me. His long hair was down to his ankles and was draped behind him, his hands in his pockets. Nothing else. As soon as I closed the menu, I lost control of him again, and he went straight to the reception gate. This time, the entrance to Route 28 had disappeared behind him. I had power over Steven once again. Remembering what he said at the start of this night, I realized what I had to do. I went to Viridian City and made my way to where else? Lavender Town. Along the way, I noticed all the trainers returned, but they wouldn't look at Steven. When I spoke to any of them, it was always met with, "Just go." They all said the same thing. Steven was to try the impossible, something some would see as a crime against nature, which many people shared that opinion. I steeled myself. It's just a game, and I was going to complete it. It took an eternity to reach Pokemon Tower. I got there eventually, taking a deep breath and heading towards the tombstone. I remembered which one. The image of Steven standing before it burned into my mind after all. First, I tried inspecting it. Steven just said, "Angel." Steven used, and then a series of ellipses come up. Steven obtained something. What in God's name did I obtain? I couldn't tell you because the game took away my control once again. I now noticed that Steven's eyes were hidden, which made me feel unnerved. Without my input, Steven began to leave the tower on his own, walking a single step by a single step. I just stared, watching him, trying to guess where he was going. But it was getting more and more prominent. He was heading to Pallet Town. Instead of the loud static, there was no sound at all. Steven went where I'd guessed. He went right to his own house. He went inside and up the stairs. Steven stopped at his brother's bed, turning to face him. At first, I thought the game froze. He didn't do anything. He just stood there and I couldn't move him. I did, however, find that I could open the pause menu. I was terrified to look, but I couldn't stop myself. I selected his trainer card. There was a low growl noise, like a distorted Pokemon cry. Steven was looking directly at the screen. He was hunched over, his bangs obscuring his face. His hair was wild and feathered out. Between his bangs, there wasn't even a face at all. Only two red eyes looking straight forward, a white grin contrasting with the darkness. That wasn't all. His name was now Steven, written in Leet speak. I couldn't look away. My eyes were glued to his, not breaking contact for some time. My vision was getting blurry, until I couldn't see very well. My face grew wet from sweating. I was nervous as to what was to come next. I was with this boy from the start. I built him up to greatness, and was then forced to watch his decline after a tragic accident. And now, he was this. I watched him go insane. I closed out the trainer card and tried to save the game, deciding to quit. You can't save the game right now. The pause menu wouldn't close no matter what I did. With no other option, I checked the bag. Nothing was inside it. I checked Pokemon, and there was only one. A single sprite met me. It had 0 HP, and its status was blank. And its name? Corrupted. I selected it, and there were 4 options. Status. It's her. Switch? Never again. Close. No. Murder. My fingers shaking, I selected murder just to get it over with, and the menu closed, showing Steven in the room again. Goodbye forever. I heard another snapping sound. The game then shut itself off. I was dumbfounded more than I was frightened. In a bit of shock, I turned it back on and the title screen was showing the manic Steven in a glitched Charizard. I pressed start and then continue out of my sick curiosity. The screen went to black. Immediately after, it showed the map of Pallet Town, Steven's home to the west, tall grass surrounding it, those unmovable stones, and the fence blocking it from the rest of the town. The image was completely static. No music, no movement, before fading to white slowly, going back to the title screen. It was as it had been when I first popped it in. A trainer and a Charizard, nothing more. I then attempted to hit continue. No. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the story. We're at the end of this one, but there are plenty more you might not have heard yet. So here are some options: my entire Pokepasta playlist, or a story that YouTube thinks you'll like from me. With all that said, I hope you leave a like, maybe a comment, and if you want to hear more, subscribe with notifications to get the latest stories as soon as they're available.